Keir Starmer says that he has changed the Labour Party, that he has put it back in the service of working people. Nothing could be further from the truth. Over the last 4 years since he's become leader, he has allowed the party to be effectively captured by corporate interests. I've spent the last 15 years investigating grand corruption around the world, from arms dealers to money launderers. Keir Starmer has personally accepted just under £43,000 in personal gratuities. That's things like football tickets, trips to holidays in Wales, staying at luxury hotels, getting tickets to go watch the races. Let's put this in perspective. This is more money accepted in gratuities than all Labour leaders since Tony Blair combined. By comparison, Jeremy Corbyn, during his entire time as Labour leader, accepted a single corporate gratuity, tickets to Glastonbury, where he spoke. Some of the people that Keir Starmer has taken money from really raises questions about his political judgment and raises serious concerns about conflicts of interest when he comes into office. He's taken £3,000 worth of tickets to go watch the races from the Arena Racing Company. The Arena Racing Company runs all of the horse tracks in the UK. In that role, it is one of the biggest players in the entire UK gambling industry. It is currently lobbying against regulations that will make it harder for problem gamblers to waste their life savings. If you know a gambling addict, you know that this is one of the most difficult addictions to kick. There are lives that have been ruined, there have been lives that have been lost, there are livelihoods that have been destroyed, because the gambling industry is an expert agency in understanding how addiction works and playing on those desires. This is a man who's accepting money from the gambling industry, and when he becomes Prime Minister, will be responsible for regulating that same industry. Another person Keir Starmer is taking gratuities from is a man by the name of Matthew Moulding, a billionaire. Keir Starmer accepted a gratuity worth just under £1,000 to stay at a luxury hotel for 4 people. Matthew Moulding has donated previously £300,000 to the Tory party. The Sunday Times has reported how Matthew Moulding has tried to use that access and has argued for a change to the listing regulations for the FTSE 500, which would make his company a fortune. But perhaps the most disturbing thing for me is that Keir Starmer has accepted football tickets from a company by the name of Mullally & Co. Mullally & Co is a construction company and only recently was fined a huge amount of money for installing defective cladding on 5 tower blocks that put the residents of those tower blocks at a serious fire safety risk. What sort of message does it send to the victims of Grenfell, to the people who expect our governments to regulate the cladding companies and the construction companies, that Keir Starmer has seen fit take money from a company like that? And the party under Keir Starmer has adopted a real problematic approach to the way it deals with business. It's now just accepting cash for access. In February this year, the Labour Party hosted an event at the Oval Cricket Ground. Business people could pay £1,000 for a ticket to go listen to Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer talk. But they also got to meet Keir Starmer and talk to Rachel Reeves. They were able to buy enhanced access to the leader of the Labour Party and the Shadow Chancellor, the sort of access that ordinary citizens can only dream of. At that same meeting, Rachel Reeves confirmed the Labour Party will not increase corporation tax above the incredibly low rate that the Tories have already set it.
We will cap the headline rate of corporation tax at its current rate of 25% for the duration of the next Parliament.
Of course, if you've been following Labour Party politics, you will know that one of Keir Starmer's firm pledges in 2020 was to reverse the corporation taxes that they are now keeping at the same level. £1,000 for big business is pocket change. It's money that's fallen behind the sofa, and for that measly amount of money, they get to go and lobby and talk to the leaders of our country to make sure that their corporations avoid billions of pounds in taxes that should be levied to transform our society for the better. This is not charity, this is a business decision. And the business decision is that we buy a football ticket, we get access to Keir Starmer, we get his ear. We get access that no ordinary people have. And it's not just Keir Starmer. There are so many members of the Shadow Cabinet who are taking huge donations from corporations or from individuals with interest in private healthcare and the city. Most people in the UK do not want a privatised National Health Service. This is why it's so disturbing that Wes Streeting, the Shadow Minister for Health, has accepted £175,000 in donations from individuals and companies that are connected to the private healthcare sector. This includes taking money from a man by the name of John Armitage, who runs a recruitment company that recruits staff into private healthcare and also recruits staff into the NHS. This raises serious conflict of interest questions. Is Wes Streeting going to allow the NHS to be privatised or bring in private companies to provide services on the NHS after he's accepted this sort of money from people with interest in private healthcare. But let's consider Jonathan Reynolds, the Shadow Business Secretary. Jonathan Reynolds accepted a gratuity worth £3,000 for him and his partner and a member of Keir Starmer's office to attend Glastonbury. Those tickets were paid for by YouTube, which is owned by Google. Not long after, the Labour Party announced that it had dropped a policy to introduce a 10% digital services tax on Google. Now, I'm not saying that the Labour Party dropped its tax on Google because Jonathan Reynolds accepted those tickets, but we have to ask the question, has the Labour Party been co-opted by that sort of gratuity? One of the most concerning things about Keir Starmer's Labour Party is the revolving door between corporate lobbying firms and the party itself. As of the end of 2023, the Labour Party had selected 20 MP candidates who are either current or former corporate lobbyists. There is almost no distinction at times between the Labour Party and a corporate lobbying sector that represents some of the worst industries, some of the most rapacious industries in the world, from arms companies to tobacco companies. Let me give you an example of how this has played out in the Labour Party. You may have been watching how the Labour Party in the last couple of weeks has excluded socialists and people of colour at the last minute through a dodgy selection process. One of those victims is a man by the name of Lloyd Russell Moyles, an incredibly popular candidate for the Labour Party in Brighton, who has done incredible work in trying to actually control and constrain the worst aspects of the arms industry while in Parliament. At the very last minute, without any warning, he was kicked off the selection list, deselected, no longer allowed to stand for the Labour Party. In his place is a man parachuted in by the name of Chris Ward. Now, what qualifies Chris Ward to be the effectively unselected candidate for Brighton and Kemp Town? Well, for one thing, he's worked for Keir Starmer for the last 10 years. But after those 10 years, he went directly from Keir Starmer's office to work for Hanbury Strategies, a lobbying firm that represents corporate clients. This shows the extent to which there's a revolving door between the Labour Party under Keir Starmer and the corporate lobbying industry. If you follow largely the mainstream media, you probably wouldn't have heard these stories about how Keir Starmer has been taking £43,000 in gratuities from billionaires and from corporations, even though they're clearly of public interest. And we have to ask the question, why? Why is that the case? One of the reasons is because there's no real distance between the political class and the media class. There's quite often literally a revolving door between the media and political parties. But often the media realizes that they need access to politicians. They need to be part of WhatsApp groups. They need to get scoops. So they refuse to criticize and hold to account politicians who can withdraw that access. There are real concerns about conflicts of interest in the Labour Party, about the acceptance of corporate gratuities. Because even if people say there's no way that Keir Starmer or the Labour Party is going to change policies just for the price of a football ticket, the question always remains, why accept them then? Why are they being given? What sort of influence do they buy? The truth is that corporate gratuities are a slippery slope. The vast majority of cases that I've investigated of grand corruption, the corruption has involved some form of gratuities. This is the way people get their foot in the door. This is the way they get enhanced access to politicians to do deals in back rooms the public doesn't see. It's time to shine a light on the murky politics of what people do behind closed doors. It's extremely important for us to hold Keir Starmer to account now, and if, as looks likely, he becomes the next Prime Minister of this country. Are Keir Starmer and the Labour Party going to represent us, ordinary people, or are they going to represent the billionaire donor class and the corporations that can gain access to our politicians by buying them luxury holidays and by buying them football tickets? These are just a few of the stories that I'll be telling in my upcoming book about the rise of Keir Starmer. It's absolutely vital that we hold our politicians to account. The independent media plays a fundamental role in that. Double Down News reports on stories that most mainstream media outlets do not look at. If you're able to, please support Double Down News on Patreon.